A security company is moving an armored car loaded with cash when a cement truck suddenly blocks its way. But the driver doesn't see a boy in a car witnessing the heist. Shaken and scared, the boy tries to call his dad, but his dad is on another call. Paralyzed by fear, the boy complies with the robber's demand to lie down on the ground. As the thieves are transferring the money bags, a security guard suddenly launches an attack, tearing off one thief's mask. To keep their identities hidden, the thieves resort to shooting the other security guards, including the young boy. The boy's father, Patrick Hill, witnesses this horrific scene and furiously charges at the robbers, but he too is shot. Before he loses consciousness, he gazes at the gunman's scarred face, committing it to memory. He survives the accident. After 3 long months of treatment, he finally leaves the hospital. He then applies for a job at the security firm that was robbed. The manager, Terry, brings up the truck incident, mentioning that 2 guards along with a civilian lost their lives that day. He informs Patrick that he will be replacing them, but he needs to pass firearms tests first. He is trained throughout the day by Boulette, and he just barely manages to reach the threshold needed to become a guard. Haven't you been shooting for quite a long time now? With just a bit more practice, it will surely come back to you. Later on, he meets up with some other guards, including Hollow and Dave. The first day at work goes very smoothly, with everything going just as planned. The following day, Patrick and Dave are in the van, waiting for Bullet, when all of a sudden, they instruct Patrick to load cash bags into the van's back. He purposely drops one on the ground. He shoots down almost all the robbers with elite precision before chasing down their leader. He nails him and blows his head off. These actions at work are scrutinized by Terry, who tells him he'll be working in an office for at least a month. However, Fortico's CEO Blake Holtz praises him, suggesting he deserves a promotion. We need him in the field. If we'd had him last year, we wouldn't be in this mess. He is then asked to carefully review the video footage of the previous truck robbery to determine if the gunmen involved in the recent robbery appear familiar to him. He closely examines one robber in particular, but ultimately tells them that no one looks familiar to him. It is then revealed that these 2 agents are working for an agent named King, who is convinced that Patrick will eventually lead him and his team to the perpetrators responsible for the first robbery. Do you have any idea what's going to happen next? If anyone discovers that I've allowed the wolf into my damn perchery, his colleagues cheer Patrick's brave actions. He expresses his gratitude to them and resumes his work as if nothing unusual had occurred. 3 months go by. Patrick and Bullet are traveling when suddenly a motorcycle obstructs their path. They find themselves encircled by armed men. Yet when Patrick steps out and reveals his identity, the gunmen promptly retreat. If I got it right, they vanished. Just like that. The doors were open. What happened, Mike? Terry can't grasp why the thieves left the money after seeing Patrick's face. But Blake hushes Terry. He informs Patrick that he'll lead his own team now and urges him to continue his work. Keep earning respect. I'm starting to suspect he's a psychopath. Weasel talks with Dave, saying Patrick has a dark soul. Later that night, after spending a heated evening with a colleague named Dana, Patrick discovers a stash of money in her apartment and questions her. She admits to stealing it from a job months ago. He shows her 2 photos of her parents and warns her of the serious consequences if she lies. Five months earlier, Patrick is with his son, Doogie, who is on vacation in the U.S. Patrick gets a call from Mike, one of his men, asking for help with one last job. You're nearby, about 10 minutes away. I assure you it's safe. Patrick and Doogie reach the docks, where the robbery is set to happen. Patrick just needs to tell Mike where the truck is headed. While Patrick is out buying food for himself and Doogie, a tragedy occurs. Number 1, has just shot the young man. After spending 3 weeks in a coma, Patrick wakes up to the devastating news that his son did not survive. He visits his ex-wife Jane, who holds him responsible for their son's death. Afterward, he meets with FBI agent King. Later on, he goes to see Mike and his associates. Understood, boss. They agree to assist him in finding those who are responsible. The organization probes the crime world, moving from team to team until they question one man. He reveals the names of 2 brothers. Patrick is brought to a building where the brothers commit various heinous crimes. He takes out the brothers. He instructs his assistant, Kirsty, to get him some documents and his son's autopsy report. We then encounter the first robbery's culprits, a group of ex-Navy men led by a certain Jackson. Among them is John, the guy who killed Dougie and shot Patrick. In the present, the team is preparing its next and final heist. Over $150 million will be divided between them. During Black Friday, over $150 million. And their henchman turns out to be Bullet. Jackson and Tom have studied the plan weeks in advance. They're all worried about John, who's unpredictable, but Jackson thinks he'll eventually follow orders. The following day, Bullet and Patrick join forces, and then suddenly, Ash, I really like you. My friends, they rob vans and I'm the guy inside. Together, we're a winning team. He disables the cameras and enters an abandoned building. Jackson's team is dressed in bulletproof suits. He enters the truck after tying Patrick's hands. He then enters the Fortico premises with Boulette's help. The robbery begins without a hitch. Everyone is lying face down, hands on the floor. But one guard panics and presses the emergency button. He requests the guards to open the gate, but being ex-military, they refuse to comply. All right, the rabbits are securely hidden, number 1. Rosé, take this. If the gate isn't opened, those bastards will kill me. Boulette, get down now. It's quite the spectacle. Bullets are flying everywhere, yet they succeed in blowing it up. They shoot everyone they see, and midway through, one of them gets injured. They leave one man to load the money. Meanwhile, the SWAT team is alerted. As police block the entrance and SWAT arrives, Patrick grabs an assailant's gun, shooting him in the leg. He strangles the man until he stops moving, then puts on the robber's bulletproof suit. He approaches the man loading money into the van. He instructs him to remove his helmet, and, meanwhile, the rest of Jackson's team is immobilized, held down by Dana and another guard, who are wasting their time. Bullet intervenes. However, once he is handed a gun, he executes both of them in the corridor. Dave attempts to take control while Terry hides. He gets shot, but Patrick unexpectedly emerges and engages in an intense battle with the attacker. He's injured but eliminates the robber. Jackson's men evacuate their wounded and head for the car when Patrick starts shooting. Dave gets up to assist Patrick. Patrick hears a click behind him. Bullet thinks he's dead. He reloads and informs Dave that the shooters have left. As he comes out, he's hit with a full magazine. While they drive away, Patrick watches John closely, recognizing him as the murderer of Doogie. He manages to break through the police roadblock and make his escape, with SWAT teams and even helicopters in pursuit. After sustaining only minor damage, they enter a building and block the entrance behind them. Jackson, who was wounded by a well-aimed shot from Patrick that grazed his neck, is ultimately finished off by Jane when they are forced to abandon the van. Bullet and Jean take the money down in the elevator. They load the bags onto quads, drive for 5 kilometers, and finally arrive in front of a car. When Bullet realizes that Jean is a traitor, he tries to kill him. You're too slow. Jean makes off with all the loot. With hundreds of tunnels available, he escapes because the police can't cover them in time. After a while, he's sitting in an apartment with all the money. A telephone rings in his bag. Suddenly, Patrick appears behind him and throws Dougie's autopsy report at him. John looks at him, confused. He begins to read the gunshot wounds to Dougie's liver, lung, spleen, and heart. Jean looks at Dougie's photo and remembers Patrick staring at him on the floor.